Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the final day of our Surveillance and Response Working Group annual meeting for 2021. So today, our last theme is based on building capacity through training. And before I introduce our session chair today, I would like to just urge all of our participants to join in on the survey that we have active for the past 1.5 days. As you know, on the first day, we jointly engaged in activity in breakout sessions to identify research priorities within the region that we think are relevant and needed for elimination targets within the Asia Pacific. Some of the topics or themes that we identified include strategies for mobile or migrant populations, cross-border surveillance, integration into the wider health system, as well as radical cure for P-Vivax were also identified. As such, we want to derive from this full list a shorter list of priorities based on everyone's input on what is needed across the region. I invite you to take about 5 minutes before we actually start the session to follow the link in the description in the chat. I believe Dr. Phone will be sharing that in the chat, or using your mobile phone devices to scan the QR code on the screen. This will lead you to the survey, and I will give you a second to do that. Just for your information, we have quite a number of participants from the partner institutions participating in this survey, and we would like to encourage more country partners to join in voting as well. So I'll give a second before I introduce Dr. Luciano, who will be our chair today.
Okay, good morning, everybody, and their APMEN partner and colleagues, good afternoon, and many thanks to APMEN to organize this important and very interesting annual general meeting. We thank you so much for inviting me to chair the session today that will be focused on building capacity to training, to identify ways to strengthen capacity to utilize data for action. I'm really honored for this invitation. For your information, in the brainstorming group section, you will be requested to self-select yourself into one of the breakout room among four room. But I think we can discuss on this at that moment. The objective today is to identify ways to strengthen capacity to utilize data for action, review and clarify training content derived from the training needs assessment, develop training that reflect the need and the preference of a target group for receiving training, and identify potential national malaria program and not malaria program collaborator for delivering training. Next one, please. We will move now to the section 4, building capacity to training. We have 2 presentations in this section, and the first one will be Dr. Aranza Rosa Feltrer, Head of Surveillance and Monitoring and Evaluation with Malaria Consortium, and the second presentation will be from Anne-Sophie Stretil, epidemiologist in Malaria Consortium. Maybe I can invite Dr. Aranza to no, sorry, they have a next slide, maybe. No, this is, yeah, next slide, sorry.
Oh, yeah, no, we can invite Dr. Aranza to start.
Okay, we can start to present. Okay, thank you for your contribution to the elimination effort in Asia Pacific region. I give the floor to Dr. Aranza to present the presentation on the surveillance, monitoring, and evaluation reference group upcoming initiative and the training resource. Thank you, Dr. Aranza. The floor is yours.
Thanks very much, and good afternoon, good morning, everybody. It's really good to see everybody again. Thanks, Luciano. I'm going to share the screen, and let me know when you can see it, and I hope you can hear me well. Can you see the slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So, so thanks again for the opportunity to present today. I'm going to really talk on behalf of the RBM Surveillance Monitoring and Evaluation Reference Group, particularly on a new sort of body or committee that has recently been established to support the specifically surveillance practice and data quality initiatives. And this is particularly relevant for the APMEN group and for the discussions that we have today for sort of building capacity and identifying training resources. So I hope that we will cover within the 15 minutes all the points. This is just the agenda, so I'll be talking a little bit of who the committee is, what it does, what are the main initiatives, a little bit then onto a past NMCP needs assessment that was conducted that really trigger and identify specific capacity gaps and initiatives moving forward for the committee. With regards to the commonly known as PDQ committee, so who we are, basically it is sitting, maybe just to explain on the organogram, it sits within the RBM SMERG, and it's a kind of a group within that it's really dedicated to document and coordinate malaria surveillance and data quality strengthening efforts. The reason why it was established over the last couple of SMERG meetings, it was becoming more and more obvious that surveillance was kind of consolidating in terms of their role and their kind of importance, and it needed to really create a space to improve the visibility and the surveillance and data quality improvement, to improve the coordination among implementing partners and the coordination of surveillance related efforts within the umbrella of the RBM. So with that sort of request coming from one of these SMERG meetings in September 2020, then the committee was sort of looking for establishment to look at the long-term, in a long-term sort of overview, the mapping and tracking all those efforts to improve coordination. It was established early this year in January 2021. It took a bit of time to really create the establishment processes, the creation of the terms of reference that was finalized in April. And some of you probably saw the request for membership, and it will be at the initial stage, it will be a 3-year effort, which is currently supported by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to really start the coordination of those different initiatives. As I mentioned, it sits under the RBM SMERG. So we have the SMERG co-chairs in terms of governance, which are Meduna and Molly Robertson. And we have SPDQ co-leads. So basically the co-leads of the committee, which is myself and Dr. Bezasal Cadrinho from the NMCP, the program manager in Mozambique. The membership is open, and please, if you have any interest or you would like to kind of be more engaged into the discussions of the surveillance practice and data quality, just drop us an email, and it is an open membership. We do meet monthly, and we do identify specific tasks and action points where we as the group are moving forward. And I'll briefly describe some of those in the next slides. The membership, as I said, keeps on growing, which is really exciting. This is already an old slide because it's really expanding as well. And it has a really mix of variety of implementing partners, stakeholders and donors, as well as NMCPs. It also brings a broad overview and a kind of expertise variety ranging from capacity building, data quality, surveillance tools, and implementation, for example. So what are the main objectives? One of the main objectives is really to disseminate information on implementing partners that are currently using surveillance, but more from an operational standpoint. What are the key tools that are being used to improve the operationalization of surveillance? We also are interested in dynamically tracking surveillance initiatives and the implementation of related tool of practices. Also with a very important interest on documenting the best practices, the lessons learned, the advantages and disadvantages of specific surveillance and data quality tools that could then be transferred or shared among the key partners. And lastly, identify the operational surveillance priorities of NNCPs to further support the uptake or adaptation of tools. And this is one of the components that will be particularly relevant for this session, which is really about mapping capacity needs and identifying training opportunities. So looking into the specific activities, we have launched a series of newsletters. These are quarterly newsletters that have specific different corners and kind of experiences from the countries, experiences from implementing partners. And just on that one, just to show the pictures of the two SMER co-chairs at the top, which is showing the pictures of Molly Robertson from PATH and Medoune from Senegal. Another important initiative that we have is the rollout of the new surveillance practice and data quality webinars that we call Malaria Routine Data in Action. So we recently had one 3 months ago, and I think it was our first one. It was really exciting. Just to also let you know about the upcoming webinar, which we are really still kind of confirming the dates. It will be the first week of December, and it's going to be going a little bit more into the experience. We heard yesterday about the WHO surveillance toolkit. This webinar in December is going to go and presenting the experiences from the implementing countries that have piloted the different types of assessments that the WHO module has, either the kind of semi kind of comprehensive or comprehensive assessments, and that we will share further information in the coming weeks. Just to touch a little bit on the creation of a systematic tracking of approaches and tools around surveillance and data quality. And we call it the SPDQ tracking, that will have two main focus dimensions. One is what is really happening at the implementing partners space. So who is doing what and where, and there is still not much clarity on what is happening geographically, different geographies, but also in different sort of expertise areas within a given country, for example. And that's really, again, to improve coordination. But the other important angle that we are really looking at mapping, it's really a surveillance maturity tracker. So how are national malaria control programs progressing in the use of surveillance as an intervention from an operational standpoint, and how are they transitioning into a fit-for-purpose surveillance system? And as you can see in that slide, these are sort of the main common themes that we are trying to sort of collect and consolidate. Some of you have probably seen the questionnaires that we have been circulated also through APMEN, and thanks so much for the very active engagement from APMEN on disseminating these initiatives. And another important sort of step within that we are doing is trying to ensure that the surveillance, the WHO surveillance toolkit could be utilized to really inform those thematic areas. So I'll skip quite quickly because we have a bit of a specific focal sort of topic around the training needs. But this is just a little bit of a timeline on what the roll out and the launch of those trackers that will be available hopefully within the Q1 in 2022. And it will be consolidated and compiled and visualized within the RBM platforms and the RBM dashboards. I think that's where I'll stop, and I'll hand over now back to my colleague Anne-Sophie, who is going to touch on the training and capacity building resources within the RBM SMERIC. Over to you, Anne-Sophie. Thanks.
Thank you, Arantxa. So as Arantxa mentioned, I would like to give you a short overview of an assessment that the SMERC conducted in 2019. So Arantxa, if you could go to the next slide. Yes. So the assessment was conducted in 2019. The results were disseminated in the beginning of this year, 2021. And the objective of that assessment was to gain a better understanding of the malaria surveillance, monitoring, and evaluation needs at a country program level. To achieve that, the questionnaire was disseminated among 104 NMC contacts. We got responses from 37 respondents, so we had a response rate of about 36% across 11 African countries. And you can see on the map which those countries were that responded to our questionnaire. Arantxa, could you move to the next slide? Thank you. The assessment helped identify priority challenges that NMCPs experience. So one challenge that countries reported was conducting data quality audits. Another challenge was improving data quality once issues had been identified. A third challenge was on data demand and using guidance for surveillance. And a third challenge was gaps in training and capacity building. And as this is the focus of today's meeting, I'd like to give you a closer look at the results on this gap. This looks like a lot, but it kind of gives you a consistent picture. And so we have 4 areas. So countries reported challenges in using data to make program and policy decisions, and challenges in assessing data quality, challenges in reporting data, and challenges in collecting program data and visualizing and interpreting data. And most respondents reported that they had some capacity, but may benefit from further training. So you can see that across national and district level and facility community level, countries reported and NMCPs reported, and that further training and capacity building might be useful. So I know that Masaya is going to give another presentation on the training assessment by APMEN. So this will be very interesting to see, because this is mostly from an African context, as most of our respondents were from Africa. So we hope that we can leverage the SMERC and the SPNDQ committee to address some of the gaps that we identified through this assessment in the future. I would like to highlight 2 main resources. So one resource is you can find on the RBM partnership site, where you can find a lot of documents and frameworks and guidance documents that were developed by SMERC members. For example, the latest guidance document is monitoring and evaluation of malaria-related routine data during the COVID-19 pandemic. So very interesting frameworks. You can just browse them and see what might be useful. And another resource I would like to highlight is a training platform. So on the next slide, Arantxa, thank you. So this was not directly developed by SMERC, but members of the SMERC have contributed to developing this training platform, just the MNEmalaria.org platform. And it already has a very useful training module on malaria surveillance, monitoring, and evaluation. It doesn't have too many training resources now, but we hope that there will be more resources over time, and that this will be a great platform to look out for in the future. Now I would like to just summarize the next steps for the SPNDQ committee. Just summing up from the initiatives that Arantxa outlined. So we would like to continue to communicate and disseminate surveillance news and updates through the SMERC and through our SPNDQ committee. We will assess the results from the current mapping exercise of implementing partners projects. And as Arantxa outlined in her timeline, we will conduct an NMCP questionnaire in the upcoming months. And then over time, use the learnings and results from these exercises to move into a systematic tracking exercise and visualize that through the RBM website. And linking to the gaps that we identified through our assessment, we hope that we can continue to leverage the committee to address country capacity gaps over time. Arantxa already highlighted the few upcoming events, but I'd just like to repeat that. So we have our next webinar is going to take place in the beginning of December. The date has yet to be confirmed, but it will likely be the first week and it will focus on experiences piloting the WHO surveillance toolkit. And the next SMERT meeting will take place on the 29th and 30th of November. And anyone who would like to join, feel free to approach me or Rancha, and we're happy to forward the invitation to you. So thank you, everyone. And if you have any questions, we're happy to take those.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aranza and Sophie and Masaya. This is extremely interesting, great presentation. Really, thanks. Please, if there have some question, I cannot see question in the chat, but let's wait some. Maybe waiting some question. I have one question to Dr. Aranza. This is about the African contest. Despite rollback malaria global presence, a lot of the work being done by the reference group seem to be focused in African contest. In your opinion, what kind of activity or plan do you have to include more representative from the ASEAN Pacific region? Thanks, Dr. Aranza.
Sure, thanks, Luciana. And I think that's a great question. And it's true, traditionally, that's always been a very Africa-centric group. Even though the RBM is supposed to kind of capture the full spectrum of endemic countries. In that effort, as I said, this is a new committee and was really established in April, May. We actively reach out the APMEN surveillance and response working group, and we are really pleased. We have had quite a few sort of touch base points with Masaya and Richard, and we are very pleased to have Richard as one of the committee members, who is super active and really contributing a lot into the conversations. And I think that's really showing to what extent we have a lot of activities in which we can complement and support each other. Particularly, for example, the lessons learned as we move into the data use and the kind of data visualization sort of components towards malaria elimination. That's where the African countries have definitely a lot to learn from. And now that a lot of the heterogeneity sort of components are very well documented in African countries, there are more and more requests to really understand how to deal with very, very low transmission settings. So I think an active engagement with the APMEN platform, it's going to be very critical, and we are very pleased to have Richard and Masaya on board. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I cannot see other question on the chat. Maybe we can move now to the next presentation. This is from Dr. Masaya Sirimatayanand from Moru Training Needs Assessment of APMEN Working Group. Please, Dr. Masaya, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you for the promotion, Dr. Luciano. It's just Masaya. Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen really quickly before we move on. Yeah, so my name is Masaya, and I think a lot of people in the meeting already know who I am, but I am the Surveillance and Response Working Group Coordinator. I work with Professor Richard, who's our co-chair for this working group at Moru. So I'm based in Bangkok, but we do a lot of work with Dr. Phone and Amita at APMEN. So what we've been doing over the past couple of months was something very similar to what the surveillance, the SPDQ has been doing, which was mapping out the needs of our partner countries and mapping out what capacity our partner institutions in APMEN have for providing some of these trainings to bridge the gap on the needs that the country partners have. So I will provide some of the introductory findings to the training needs assessment, A lot of you have contributed to the survey, to the follow-up discussion. So my thanks goes to all of the individuals who are present and not present for your contribution to this as well. So like I mentioned, the motivation behind conducting this survey was that we wanted to scope kind of the needs of the national malaria programs and the capacity that the partner institutions have to provide the trainings. We want to use the assessment in order to do a couple of things, match the similarities and training needs that exist across the different programs in the Asia Pacific, and create a form of partnership between these country partners, match the partner institutions with the training capacity with programs that have the training needs to create technical support initiatives. And part of that will be in the form of training workshops. And the final way, the reason why we're doing this is that we want to identify any channels for further exchange, such as identifying Tech Talk topics that are of interest. And for those of you who do not know, Tech Talks is one of APMEN's activities, ongoing activities that is cross-cutting between the different working groups, Vector Control Working Group and VIVAX Working Group being the other two. And these Tech Talk topics talk about a variety of topics in our respective working groups that are of interest to our partners. And most recently, we had a Tech Talk on the topic of drug resistance surveillance within the Asia Pacific region. So online workshop is one of the main things we're trying to get out of this training needs assessment, what topics we should focus on, what kind of target groups we have for delivering these topics as well. And it might be a little curious as to why the Surveillance and Response Working Group is doing this. And the reason being, Richard and I have just taken in managing the Surveillance and Response Working Group. This year, we have just received the new hosting institution arrangement with APMEN. And to inform a lot of what we want to do over the next year, since we have this, we have the chairmanship and the hosting arrangement up until 2022, we want to guide some of these things to be more targeted and respond to a lot of the needs of our partners rather than rolling out things that we aren't really aware of, since the change in partnership and since the pandemic has started. A lot has changed in what kind of needs exist for our partners. So what we did was we developed a survey in consultation with the Secretariat and the other two working groups, Vector Control and VIVAX Working Group. We also rolled out the survey in one soft launch round, which we received feedback from a couple of our malaria program partners and some very, very active partner institutions, including Dr. Arancha from Malaria Consortium at the SPDQ as well. And we included these feedback to improve the survey format, to include more content specific training topics as well. And we rolled it out on the Qualtrics platform. So the distribution was done in 4 rounds, including the soft launch. We had an audience target group of about 137 people, 52 which were from malaria control programs of about 20 countries, not about, 20 countries in the Asia Pacific region, and 85 members from our partner and donor organizations. And following this survey, we also asked participants if they were interested in following up with some of the responses they submitted in the survey. And from the country partners, we want to know what kind of challenges they have in their programs, clarify what content they're interested in receiving under these broader training topics that we have listed within the survey, and specify the target groups they want to receive this training within their respective countries as well. With partner institutions, we wanted to reconfirm their interest to collaborate, help us clarify contents they wish to cover in different training modules, and scope out for any courses or tools that are already ready to be shared or are currently under development and would like us to help share or advertise in the coming months or in 2022. I'll give you a bit of a briefing on the findings from both the survey and the follow-up discussions. In terms of responses, we received a total of 40 responses from all of the partners. 22 were from country partners, but only from 13 unique country partners. And 18 were from partner institutions, from 15 unique partner institutions. So you'll see that there is a bit of diversity in the activeness from different partner countries in responding to the survey. Bangladesh was particularly active, and we received responses from various level of staff. And this is really important for us because as we learned, receiving a response from multiple staff level does help us identify what the target groups for specific trainings are, and that there is some diversity in the type of training that is identified by managerial level staff and more subnational level staff, like peripheral level staff or field staff. As you can see here, the majority of our respondents are from the managerial level, but we do have some responses from subnational level, district level staff, and field implementation staff as well. And that has been the key way that we've used to identify participants to interview further, to hash out the details of the content that we wanted to include in a lot of these courses. In terms of the training topics, we've asked country partners and partner institutions to indicate which training topics they'd like to receive training in or provide training for. So as you can see here, when it's ranked by how many country partners have expressed their interest, more skill-based training seems to be of interest for a lot of our partners, like mapping and GIS, mathematical modeling, some operational aspect as well, program management, operational research methodology, how to write research papers. So relatively skill-based training. When we do move on to asking partners what kind of priority they have in their programs based on the training topics they've selected, it changes a little bit. So we've asked country partners to rank the top 3 training priorities based on the training topics they previously selected. In the analysis part of this survey, we assigned points to the different rankings. So for rank number 1 topics, we assigned 3 points, 2 for 2, 3, 1 point for the 3rd rank, etc. And then we have the responses balanced as well, because some countries, for example, Bangladesh has submitted multiple responses, and to balance out the responses, we counted multiple responses from a single country as a single response per the topic, research topic that they select. Sounds a little complicated, but it really isn't. Basically, we made sure that we only counted topics once rather than twice, and assign points to the different levels of priority for each of the topics. As you can see here, the highest ranking research training priority for our partners seem to be entomological surveillance, followed by a couple of topics that relate to case-based surveillance, integration of data, case investigation. So here, when you rank the topics by priority level, you'll see that country programs do choose topics that relate more to addressing the challenges that they might face in their specific programs. So rather than skill-based training, they relate more to some general challenges that they face in terms of how to collect data for entomology surveillance, or how to use, the data they have to find policy responses that match what is needed in their context. So it does change a little bit more when it comes to priority, is the main, the main idea from this slide. Next, when we look at the preferences for receiving or providing training, we will see that most country partners and partner institutions do prefer to receive training on online version, with face-to-face training being the most popular. This is mainly because it increases interaction between the members within the group, and they prefer, because we are unable to do in-person training, but that has been traditionally the way that training is delivered. The next best thing would be the virtual version of that, which is face-to-face training. In terms of the platform for training, Zoom has been the most popularly selected. For the duration of the training, there is some diversity between the deliverer and the trainers and the ones who want to receive training. Country partners do prefer shorter training courses as compared to partner institutions, and that's relatively understandable due to their commitments with the program and the lack of time that could be set by for receiving training. In terms of when they want to receive training, most responses are for afternoon. And just so you know, the responses have been adjusted to Singaporean time. So Singaporean time in the afternoon is what country partners and partner institutions have indicated as the preferred time to receive and give training. So as mentioned, we conducted the follow-up discussions as well. Richard and I met with a lot of our partners, both country partners and partner institutions, to discuss the content, discuss the preferences, discuss the challenges, as mentioned in the prior slides. Out of the 40 respondents from the survey, only 32 had indicated their interest to be interviewed further, partly because of other commitments, or partly because they've indicated that they have other commitments this year or in the early of next year. 24 out of the 32 who responded their interest to be interviewed have actually been interviewed. 11 of them are from country partners from 8 unique countries, and 13 are partner institution representatives from 10 unique organizations. So some of the emerging interest and preferences that we've got from these interviews is that country partners want to learn from other country partners, and partner institutions also recommend that some of the country partners in the Asia Pacific region can speak about their experience in a context that would be valuable for other partners as well. Some recommendations include wanting to hear about the surveillance system in Thailand, China, or Sri Lanka, as well as partner institutions suggesting that partner countries will get value from listening about surveillance systems or data quality assessment tools being used in Thailand, or the data integration onto the MIS system in the Philippines. From country partner perspective, they do want to start from a basic level training before moving on to more higher level training. This is more for skill-based training topics. Would most likely apply more to topics like mapping and GIS, statistical analysis, mathematical modeling. And when we're talking about the type of tools to use, they've indicated a preference for more simple tools and also for free software as well. Training is one thing that we didn't ask within our training needs assessment survey was the target group for receiving a lot of this training. And a lot of the feedback we're hearing from our partners is that they want to have these trainings be accessible to peripheral level staff, and that any past trainings, may have this limitation because it's usually in-person training and only a selected group amount of individuals can actually join in on a lot of these trainings. So the benefit of doing training on a virtual platform is that we will be able to reach a larger audience at the peripheral level as well. The other challenges we will have with doing this is with language and, reaching or being able to effectively provide training for peripheral level staff that might have a bit of a language barrier as well. So a combination of training modes were actually the most popularly mentioned by our partner countries. Rather than having a single way of delivering training, they prefer a mixed method. So delivering face-to-face virtual training alongside on-demand videos where people can access if they're unable to commit time in specific time slots, as well as to have a support system, which was actually really important for a lot of partners. They've indicated that it would be more beneficial and ongoing if trainers are able to provide support outside of the classroom time and to provide support that relate more closely to implementation of the skills that they've learned in the classes. For the length of training, we found that it really depends on the type of training topic that we will use, that we want to deliver, as well as the duration of the training in each day. Shorter daily training classes would be delivered on a longer period of time to reiterate the skills, while more content-specific training classes could be delivered in a couple of days with longer sessions in place. So the follow-up interviews did identify priority training topics that are generally similar to the training topics that we have already, the ranking of the training topics already identified in the survey, but we were able to find out that there were quite a bit of divergence in the type of content that participants are expecting to receive in either one or more of these training topics that were discussed. So we know that entomological surveillance is still a top priority for our respondents, and we have clustered some of the other topics together due to the type of content that emerged from our discussions as well. So my presentation is meant to be a bit of the background to understanding why we're doing the TNA and to give you a bit of a leeway to move into the breakout session that Dr. Luciano will explain in shortly. But what we have derived from the analysis from our interviews is that there are a few training topics that we can capture relatively quickly, and there are trainers available for these topics as well. So I'm going to hand this back to Dr. Luciano. And for you can go on and explain how some of these topics will be mapped and explained or explored further during the breakout session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Masaya. Before we move to the section 4 for the work group. Maybe we have some question and answer for your presentation, but also for the previous presentation from Dr. Aranza. Please, colleagues, if you have some question about these two very interesting presentation, please. Maybe waiting some question from the colleagues. I have one question to Dr. Masaya. With the analysis relatively done during your presentation, what are your expectations from the breakout section that will follow? Thank you.
Yeah, so one thing we've gotten from the follow-up discussion is a list of content that should fit under these general training topics. But we want to hear from maybe the audiences today whether these content fit what they expect from these training topics or not. And we've asked, facilitators with very specific backgrounds in these specific topics to help hash out the contents that would be relevant for possible participants in the future. And what content is deliverable on the respective platforms that we wish to actually deliver the training in. The other important thing is the training needs assessment was done without a specific target group in mind for the topics as well. When breaking down the groups later, we want people to think about, who they want who within their programs they want to receive this training when they're designing the type of content that should appear, when they're designing, what kind of mode they should be delivering this training in. So yeah, just making sure that it's a little more catered to the target group who wants to receive the training as well, and having a more comprehensive content list is what we want the next section to kind of bring out.
Thank you. I can see one question in the chat. This comes from Dr. Jetsumon. Can we have a customized training as each country partner may not need the same training at the same time?
Yeah, exactly. That's one thing that so what we're trying to do in this early stage is make training that is a lot more accessible to people before we move on to more bilateral level training. So like you mentioned, some of the topics will be more specific. Case and foci investigation may be very, very specific to certain contexts, depending on where they are in their elimination stage. But there are some primary level training that could be delivered for a larger audience as well. So we want to start off from that. And then as mentioned in the presentation, we want to move towards more specific collaborations. Dr. Jet, we welcome you to join in the discussion, and you can let us know which topics you think should be more specific, which countries you're interested in providing any specific training in as well.
Sorry, I missed most of the meeting. I just joined about 20 minutes ago. We discussed as a face-to-face meeting, and from my other experience working with some of the country partner, I think when you ask for the common training they want, it may be some country agree at the same time, a certain type, but when you go as a training period or something like that, it's sometimes it's hard for them, So I think anything that we can do virtually now, because many people get used to for virtual training, maybe it can be like you can cost and anyone that ready for any time. They can come, but they do not have to come at the same time. I think I'm thinking about as a country partner, maybe any country partner and MCP can say if I was wrong, if things change. But what I found is that whenever you offer the training course that you expect that maybe 3 or 4 countries can join, is always sometime, some countries could not join even they want it because of that certain time of the year they have other missions to serve their ministry or something like that. So I think as the partner institute, you know, we like to offer the training if we can help to all the NMCP. And it would be best fit if they can set a time, you know, in a year, maybe some group with the same training, but some group can come at the certain time, some group can come at the other time, and that would be best fit with them. That's what I mean.
So yeah, we have received a number of finding reports from, you know, our partners when we were interviewing, you included, that we have to deliver training in a way that is accessible to people. And the way we want to do that, and obviously this will really depend on our partners who want to deliver the training as well, is that we want to do face-to-face in-person training, but record those sessions for use later on. A platform that does pre-recorded videos would be the perfect way to do that as well. And some of our partners suggest using, you know, specific platforms like Moodle to have videos uploaded so people can access it and then do the activities that come with, you know, in the module, and then submit that at another time. So there's no specific time frame committed to a specific course, but we will let the breakout sessions kind of think about what, you know, if that would be the kind of delivery that is good for their specific topics, because like you said, it will diverge depending on the topics that we want to, you know, deliver, as well as the target group that would be able to join in on these topics as well.
Yeah. And as you know, the NMCP representative or the group that really has responsible for certain tasks for malaria elimination may change quick too, like every year, every other year, there will be the new person come or something like that, but the mission stay, right? The people change, and how we can help them be efficiently continue their duties without restart step one again every year. I think that's the challenge for the group.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you for this question. I can see another question on the chat, and this is for you, Dr. Masaya. I don't know if you can see the chat. The question is the training listed by you, who one can enroll in those training.
Yeah. So actually, the training that's been listed is just training topics we've scoped to see who wants to do, you know, who wants to join in these trainings. We actually don't have the training actually ready. So parts of what we want to do today is develop these training modules together. So please, Ali Khan, if you would join in for the next breakout sessions and discussing which topics you want to see training, you know, come out from the SRWG, feel free to stay on with us for a little bit longer to help develop those courses with us. But for entomological surveillance, just an FYI, we do have a lot of training resources already available through the Vector Control Working Group, and Professor Leo, who will be chairing or facilitating the breakout group on this topic specifically, will be able to give you some information about the available resources right now.
Thank you so much. If no other question, I cannot see other question in the chat. Maybe we can move to the next session, and I will provide you some information in this training module brainstorming section. The main objective of this section is to review and clarify training content derived from the training need assessment, and the second main objective is develop training that reflect need and preference of a targeted group for receiving training, and the last main objective is identify potential national malaria program and not national malaria program collaborator for delivering receiving training. The format of this section, participants, both NMP and not NMP, will be asked to self-select themselves into a breakout group that will focus on different training topics: entomological surveillance, data utilization, and basic statistical analysis, case and foci investigation, map, and GIS. One Facilitator will be assigned to each room. We will have 4 rooms. All sections will focus on clarifying the objective above for each training topic, but the section on entomological surveillance, which will be led by vector control working group, will focus on sharing their training results and getting feedback from participants about their training modules. Note that an holding slide showing the facilitator and the training topics that will cover duration of the section and other group work details that will be prepared by the support team and put on display during the plenary section. Upon I will mention the four facilitator. Dr. Leo Brack will facilitate the group on entomological surveillance. Dr. Leo Brack is a senior vector control specialist, Malaria Consortium Asia technical lead. Dr. James Watson will facilitate the group for data utilization and basic statistical analysis. Is a senior scientist from Moru. Dr. Charavat Roteyan Praset is a biostatistics lecturer at Maidol, Moru, will facilitate a group on case and foci investigation, and Dr. Steve Hebner, manager at Health Geolab Collaborative, will facilitate the section group on mapping and GIS. I think we need to move now. Yes, just one more issue is we will take 5 minutes for allocation to the group and 45 minutes for breakout and 5 minutes for polling. And what the expected outcome from this group is we have 3 expected outcomes. The first is a comprehensive list of content for training topic, preference for receiving training that also cater the target group to receive training for the respective training topics, and a working document, a PowerPoint slide per training topics.
Dr. Luciano, there's just been a bit of a change with the facilitators. I will just inform to the group because we have 1 facilitator short for today. Dr. James Watson will not be joining us, so Dr. Chowrat will actually be taking on the data utilization and basic statistical analysis group, and Richard and I will help out with the case and foci investigation. So I think phone right now is creating the breakout groups on Zoom, and once that's created, we ask participants to self-select themselves into the breakout groups that they're interested in, contributing further in, and they can do so by pressing on the breakout tab that will appear on your Zoom tab below. So on the desktop version, you can see this 3 boxes. This is breakout rooms option. Once you press on it, you can select which group you want to join. If you're on your mobile devices, the Zoom breakout rooms will appear on the top left-hand corner of your screen, and you can press on that and select whichever group you want to join as well. Yep, so we'll just give them some time to self-select themselves.